Well, a variety of things. Of course, you need to find out who the key stakeholders are. You need to find out who's interested, who's the decision maker. Does that mean that's similar to many other types of business? Um, but you also need to be able to have a kind of deep dive into policy documents. I mean, at the moment, working with Grid, you need to be able to go and find their transport plans. You need to have an understanding of them because they're often 10-year plans, but they're maybe halfway through them. So you need to have an understanding of that. You need to understand if they are innovators or if they are more traditional users of technology or even not using technology very much. I'll give an example of that. When I was working in the social care, one of the councils that we were targeting, turns out that the director of adult social care is ex-nurse, very traditional view of adult care, and like rapidly dropped down the priority list because like this is going to be there was no indication that they were interested in any kind of innovation, whereas there are other people you could tell that from their LinkedIn or from the council website that they were more interested in innovation. On the other hand of that, we've got more recently with Grid, have looked at transport plans, and they've like specifically mentioned bookable loading bays. And that does no harm to remind them of the fact that this is in their transport plan, because ultimately it's much easier to sell somebody if they think it's their own idea. And then it's also on the back of that is understanding what the actual procurement process is. Like when trying to sell into adult social care, I made, quite a lot of time contacting directors of adult social care. Only to really find out they're not that interested. They're too high up running a department. They're not necessarily interested in individual solution or part solution to some of their problems. Whereas commissioners, tech managers were much more interested and could be then used to influence. And they also have a lot more autonomy than you maybe like necessarily think of. And more recently, the same kind of thing with, directors of public realm can be a challenge to get through to and get hold of. Whereas like mid-level parking and transport managers have been the people I've had the most success with recently. They may need to get some sign off, further up, but they do have a certain amount of autonomy. The other thing I think is many of us work in areas where there are events. There's lots of public sector events, and I think utilizing those, whether you've got a stand at the event or not, is finding out who's going to them in advance if possible, encouraging them to go and visit your stand if you have one, and following up with them even if you don't have a stand. Just last week, I've been trying to get hold of somebody in my local council. I've had very little luck, but they went to an event that a couple of senior people in my organisation have attended and immediately got a response. So like a little bit of local leverage and a little bit of you were at this same event, and that seemed to get somewhere. And then I think the final thing I'll talk about is how you're getting in touch with these people. I think you need to be able to write a good punchy email. It has to be personal. It has to have a call to action. It has to be able to show how your service, your product can solve some of the problems that they have. And you have to ask them to kind of get back in touch with you, and hopefully you can reference it to some of their own policy documents, the problems that they say that they have on their own website. So I think those are the four things I think help you get a foot in the door. I'm not even going to go down the whole procurement and platforms for getting in. That's just like as a simple one person approaching to sell a solution.